Our average client is around 40 years old and they have about 10 to 20 cars. So listen, the age is very young. It's very, very young. And the future is very, very bright. We have numerous clients in their late 20s, early 30s, some Bitcoin, not a lot of Bitcoin, but anything from the finance world, the tech world. So it's really, really impressive to see a much younger generation. I would say chasing cars from 2000 to 2010. I call it the video game generation.
Today, I'm thrilled to chat with John Temerian, CEO of We Are Curated, a Miami-based boutique dealership specializing in rare vintage supercars and catering to the ultra elite. We explore how his lifelong passion for supercars has made him the go-to expert for the rich and powerful looking to build world-class car collections and what the economics of these businesses really look like. A big thank you to our sponsors for making today's episode possible: CDK Global, Car Dealership Guy News, and Access Point Consulting. And now let's get into the show.
John Temerian on the CDG podcast. John, welcome.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well, man. I don't know how to start this podcast. There's a lot to cover here, so I'm really pumped about it.
Well, I think you're a pro at this, so I'm sure you'll.
You never feel like a pro, so definitely not
right?
a pro. But it's yeah. I think the best strategies that I've kind of come across is just explore your curiosity. Just be genuinely curious.
I love it.
Put the notes down, and the questions will flow.
I love it. There you go. There you go.
Oh man. Well, dude, you've built quite a business. And you've partnered with some VCs along the ways. I mean, I don't know many people that have slung metal and have partnered with venture capitalists. I'm proud to say that I'm one of them. But there's not many of us in this small community, man. Tell us, can you give us your background, your brief story?
Yeah. So I started. My grandfather was an incredible engineer, mechanic, really sort of like the American dream, came to this country, worked really hard, ended up saving enough money to buy a gas station. And fast forward in the late 1950s, early 1960s, was one of the few people in Massachusetts or the Northeast servicing Ferraris at the time and Jaguars and Rolls-Royce. Really an incredible story.
I haven't heard of that brand, Jaguar. How are they doing nowadays?
We won't talk about that today. Jaguar was an incredible car company that raced Le Mans, won Le Mans. Anyways, and so these incredible photos of my grandfather is, maybe had $500 to his name, and then go fast forward to the mid 60s, was driving a Jaguar E-Type. And my grandmother in a fur coat. So very cool American dream story. And my father was supposed to become a stockbroker. He was like 16, 17, preparing for college. And all he wanted to do was rebuild engines. And my grandfather was just livid. He's like, there's no way. A cool part of that story is my grandfather was actually buying the old cars from Luigi Canetti, who was the Ferrari distributor at the time. He put Ferrari on the map in the US. So he had a 250 short wheelbase, a 250 GTO. And my father hated those cars. He loved Jaguar E-Types and he loved the new Lamborghini Miura. So my father convinced my grandfather to sell the 250 GTO, convinced him to buy a few Miuras that needed work. They fixed them up. They sold them. And at a very young age, my father ended up becoming an incredible technician, working on Miuras when they were basically new cars. And fast forward, I grew up on the floor of my father's shop. I started sweeping floors, cleaning his tools. And my father is an artisan. I mean, he's a very, very tough guy. He's super OCD. So imagine while, some kids were playing baseball or soccer, my dad was teaching me about the details on a Countach or a Miura. Like, that's the wrong rubber. You see, that's how you know it's an original tire, original leather. And as a kid,
and John, and how did at the time? So when he was teaching you this stuff, he was a technician.
Yes, he was basically an authorized service for Lamborghini in the 1980s. While they were, it was a famous distributor, Joe Nastasi, and he was authorized to do factory warranty work. And then fast forward in the 1990s, he was the leading two-beat dealer in the world. So that's when a lot of the Ferrari supercars, F40s, F50s, he was servicing those. But there was one day at his shop, I'll never forget, There was like 16 Lamborghini Countaches, two F40s, and LM002, all these cars. So I grew up around that, and very, very fortunate to be learning those details as a very young kid, up until, from 8 years old to 18.
And I mean, clearly today you built an incredible business. Your father being a technician, you've really, taken that to new levels and extremes. How did all this come to be?
Well, thank you. So completely surreal. 18 years old, I move out. I want to do something on my own. I didn't actually want to do anything with cars at the moment. I wanted to do something in the marketing world, and started promoting nightclubs, ironically. And I figured I there was a little way to get sort of like this buzz around nightclubs. And I used to do these car events at nightclubs. So I'd invite the Ferrari club. I'd invite the Lamborghini club. And through online forums, I could, talk the talk with all these collectors. I knew what I was talking about. And I would invite collectors. It's so funny. We recently had a client walk in and he's like, wait, I remember you. You used to put flyers on my car to come to your stupid nightclub parties. So I was definitely, busting my butt and pushing these nightclub events. And fast forward, that turned into an event called the Palm Beach Supercar Weekend. And really what I realized was that the real estate world was growing and expanding. At the time, 2004 to 2006, the real estate market was really just booming. And I went to a major real estate company in Palm Beach. And, I was a 19-year-old kid or whatever, however old I was. And I said, listen, I have an incredible way to bring you pre-qualified buyers for your homes. And they said, how would you do that? And I said, through supercar owners. So we put together our first event. It was called the Supercar Weekend. And we had like 30, 40 supercars, which at the time, there weren't a lot of these events. Today there's these events all the time. And I mean, we had Carrera GT, Enzo, all these incredible cars. I was very, very fortunate. And this is a pivotal point for me as a young person. At that moment, Donald Trump was selling a $230 million home or $130 million home in Palm Beach, called the Gosman Estate. And very, very fortunate to have his endorsement to actually host my event at the house. And I got to take photos with him at the time. And I milked those photos and overnight, It was the next morning, it was in the press. It was on the cover of all the, papers. So I really got at a very young age, the understanding of marketing and PR and how to sort of work with like-minded brands and build a brand. That event ended up becoming fairly large in the Southeast region. But I was a complete disaster as a business owner. I did not know what I was doing, honestly. And the reality is I got in a lot of trouble. There's a long story with that.
So John, save us the Googling. And this is the beauty of the CDG podcast. It's super candid. So give us just like a little sneak peek of like, what went wrong.
Yeah. So imagine, I mean, you launched this event. The year after the first event, I launched it as a public event. So I was selling tickets. I was shutting down basically almost a mile of road on the West Palm Beach waterfront. I had sponsors coming in. So it actually became a big event. We'd attract 15, 20,000 people, 150 cars. And really, I had outside investors coming to me, people coming to me, and I ended up partnering with the wrong people. And literally, I take it, whether their intentions were bad, I was naive. I was just greedy, and I thought I was making the right decisions at the time. And I made some terrible financial decisions. I put myself in the hole, a couple $100,000. And imagine you're talking about a guy at the time that I had maybe $500 to my name. So, putting myself in the hole, $500,000 was pretty horrible. And I ended up actually writing a bad check, not realizing it bounced. And I was actually arrested. It made the cover of the Palm Beach newspaper.
We know all about that in the car business, my friend. Bad checks. Oof. I'm sure every dealer listening is smiling right now and saying, "Yep, I know all about that."
So I learned the most incredible lesson at 22 or 23 years old. And really at that moment, I had to restart my career. You know, I had produced probably 4 or 5 years of these events. They were visually, they were incredibly successful. You know, there's a ton of magazine clippings. There's a ton of really interesting things that we did. But I also learned the value of like, you've got to build the foundation before you build the house. And I was just, forget the house. I was building, you know, fireworks. You know, so I really learned that at a young age. And at that point in my life, I was really open to mentorship and I was lucky enough to have a lot of car collectors around me, successful people, entrepreneurs, that started really giving me great insight, that really believed in me and wanted to see me grow. And that's sort of the first part of the story. And then at that point, you know, once I started to sort of rebuild my career, I was 24, 25. I started to write a business plan. And that was a business plan for an exotic car rental business.
One thing I'm fascinated about in our industry is like all these tangential businesses. I view them as like, you know, like you fall into this bucket where it's like the average person that is whether they're a dealer or maybe they're a franchise dealer or a small dealer, they just flip a car, right? They don't think of these businesses. These are more niche businesses. And so I'm always fascinated about that, how they actually work, the economics of them, profitability, like everything. We'll go through all that. I think if we can just get started on how did you come around to launching CURATED, which I know is the next part of your story here, but.
So we had this rental car business. It was doing okay. You know, marketing wise, we had a big name for ourselves. And I started to make a little bit of money. And the first thing I did at that time was I realized that a lot of my dad's former clients, a lot of people in the car world, through my car shows, would actually contact me to inspect a car. Hey, John, I need you to inspect a Countach. I need you to inspect a Miura. And I started to understand the power of the knowledge that I had from being a little kid, and years of being in my dad's workshop and around him. So I said, man, there's something here, you know, and there's really no one that has taken this generation of cars serious. At the time, you know, if you told someone, you know, the price of a Countach was $80,000, the price of an F40 was $200,000, $300,000, especially Countaches, they were seen as like a Playboy's car, an ostentatious used car. They weren't really respected. And I just saw that as such, you know, almost like an injustice. You know, here is what is to me one of the most important supercars of our time. It really an object of aspiration. You think of all the young people that grew up with a Countach as a poster on their wall. And I said, why is no one taking these cars serious? So in the back of my mind, I was always thinking, wow, my dream would be to build a dealership that treats the cars as art and totally shifts the way of thinking of classic cars. And when I first started to tell people my idea, everyone laughed at me. They were like, a Testarossa is not a classic car. A Lamborghini Diablo is not a classic car. That's a old Lamborghini. And I just kept saying, no, you're wrong. So, you know, and I grew up around reading magazines with an AMG Hammer on the cover and a Roof Yellowbird and all these important cars that at the time were not appreciated at all.
I'll pretend like I know the vehicles you're talking about, but we'll keep going. I'm bad, man. I am like, yeah. I used to be like at the auctions and like someone would have like a classic lane or something. And I would just be sitting there looking at the spreadsheet, trying to see, you know, what cars are going with like 3 lanes down there. And like, you know, there's two types of dealers, right? There's the dealers that are all into the car, like they're checking it out. And, you know, and listen, I'm curious, right? It's just not like a passion for me. But then there's the dealers like me who are just all about the numbers. Like, what can I sell this thing for? Where can I sling this thing? Where is it going to move the quickest?
I am all passion. I am all passion.
This episode is brought to you by CDK Global. CDK Global has been empowering nearly 15,000 dealers with the tools and technology they need to build deeper relationships with customers. Their team is keenly aware of the state of dealership technology, and while many vendors promise seamless experiences between your CRM, DMS, digital retail, and fixed ops, most of these bolt-on solutions tend to break workflows and cause more harm than good. That is why CDK has launched a new dealership experience platform. This new integrated software consists of everything you need to operate a dealership efficiently while delivering an unparalleled experience to your customers. Basically, everything working together, not separate. One system to run your dealership as opposed to 10. CDK developed it with an outside-in approach, listening to dealers every step of the way. You can learn more about CDK's dealership experience platform by visiting cdkglobal.com/DXP or clicking the link in the show notes below.
The beauty of this platform is that there are people listening who will appreciate these specific makes and models 10 times more than even you will, maybe. And they're all into it. So
I love it. Well, and you need both mindsets. And that's part of the curated story, which I'll tell you guys about. So early days, I made a little bit of money, $30,000, $20,000 in savings, and I'd go out and get loans on a 355 challenge on an old Diablo. And I'd go out and take loans. I'd fix up the car and I'd sell it. And at the time, we had a gentleman that came from Spain. He was a former attorney, really a smart finance guy, did not care about cars, that was confused as to what I was doing. And he said, "What are you doing with these cars? I thought cars were a depreciating asset. How are you buying these cars, waiting 5-6 months, a year, and selling them for more money?" And I'm like, "Well, no, cars can appreciate." And this is, and I was explaining that to him. So, this is one of my best friends in the world. Today, he's my business partner, is Jordy Ricart. And Jordy went out to friends and family and said, "Hey, I have this guy in Miami. He's doing this. Maybe if we give him a little money, he can do it at a bigger level." So he actually started off of a friends and family loan that Jordy got from an incredible guy, Gerard, out of Spain. And we started with one puntage. And then we went and raised some more money.
John, what were you doing at the time? Were you just buying, selling cars? Were you consignment? What were you doing?
So we were nothing really in terms of a dealership. We were literally a exotic car rental business in Miami. We had a fleet of 10 to 15 cars, Ferraris and Lamborghinis. And that business was okay. It was not, we weren't going to get rich doing that. It's a very tough business for anyone that's looking to get into the rental car business. It's not an easy business. I would never recommend it. I would never do it again. The day we closed that business was the greatest feeling in the world.
It's like the restaurants of the car industry, huh?
You just said it. There's no question. And I think what all of the other things that I had done in my career, they had to happen. The failures, the PR and marketing, the understanding of that in both the rental car business, dealing with celebrities, dealing with social media, the car show aspect, dealing with clients. All of these things had to come together for me to create Curated.
What specifically would you say is the pain point with launching these supercar rental business?
Well, the reality is you have to rent them for a certain amount per day. Depreciation will catch up on you so bad with these cars. It's not really the maintenance. The newer exotic cars, they're very, very durable. But it's related to the depreciation. And what happens is, if you have a bad summer, a bad winter, whatever it may be, guess what? You can't start lowering your prices to $500 a day on a car that you should be getting $2,000 a day. Because you start letting those cars go out, you turn around and, after 1 year, you've got 30,000 miles on a Lamborghini Huracan. It's not worth the same as when you bought it. So it's really a model that you have to be so focused on the financials. And the reality is people are not.
Yeah. It's almost like a business that naturally spawns out of just enthusiasm. Like, I love these cars. And then, but to your point, probably very like razor thin margins to the point where you need to manage it tightly. It reminds me sort of like the wholesale business in our industry, right? Where if you, maybe it's not that tight of, margins and, operationally, but you have to really, you have a little bit more slack with retail. Not saying that you have a lot of slack, but you have a little bit more than wholesale. Wholesale, it's the margins are thin and you got to move very quickly.
Yes. And listen, I think what happens wholesale, at least your margins, right away. It's like, you're doing the deal in a short amount of time. What's scary about the rental car business is it's that depreciation curve that's sneaking up on you constantly. And you might have a car for 8 months or 12 months, and then you're like, oh my God, what just happened? All of the revenue I've generated is gone in 1 second.
So in theory, if you had a business like this and you had a large social following or something, and you could pre-rent the vehicles and have like almost like a waiting list or something like that, that could de-risk the depreciation and make this a more durable model.
100%. I mean, listen, there is a way to make it financially, there is a way to make it work, but it is not I think people go into it thinking it's going to be a great lifestyle, and it's going to be I'm going to have fun, and I'm going to get to use these cars. And it's just, oh yeah, I only have to rent them 5 days a month. It's not the case at all.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. So now fast forward us to Curated. Like, can you just tell us, what is your business model today? What do you do?
Yeah. So, when we first started, the goal always from day one was to pursue the best of the best blue chip cars. And I always use the term investment quality cars. And I'm a big believer then, when we first started 10 years ago, that these cars were an alternative asset. And I don't give financial advice. I don't, that's not what I do. But I'm personally invested in these cars. I personally believe in these cars. And listen, they've proven themselves. I think today it's generally accepted that blue chip, super, high quality, specific cars are a hold of value. At least they are an alternative asset. So I was always focused on this really high quality. And that was the goal with the term curated. The name curated was, this is art, and as fine art is considered an alternative asset, there's nothing wrong that a car that brings, to me, cars of a certain generation, there's this beautiful aspect of the social environment, the people you meet, the fact you can share it with family, the experience of driving it. So there's all these other aspects. And then, I think, listen, there is a generation of people that grew up with these cars in video games. They grew up with these cars in TV, movies, the magazines, the posters. And I think there's a culture, especially in America, of entrepreneurs that were inspired by these cars. I'll tell you my own personal story. My dream, I'll never forget this. In 1995, my father was servicing a purple Lamborghini Diablo SE30. I got a ride in the passenger seat. I was 11 years old, and his client, Mr. Glenn Marcus, gave me a ride, and that impacted me that day. And I said, oh my God, man, I need to figure out what I need to do in life to own one of these. Am I going to be a stockbroker? What am I going to do to own one of these one day? So I think it's way more important than the car. And I think, our job was to take those stories, take these cars that are really, if you think of, to me, this generation of cars, it changed the world forever. You think of the supercars that broke all these records that were, you had visionaries and engineers that were pushing design, technology, and all these things. They shifted the world forever. And today you have these massive brands that are producing thousands of cars based on a limited production of cars from the 80s and 90s. So to me, it was like, okay, this is true modern art. We need to recognize this. We need to document these cars and bring these cars to another level and share them with people and make dreams happen for a young generation. So that's really our business model. I mean, I would say first and foremost, we're historians. But the reality is that's what sells the cars. I mean, the cars sell themselves. And John, do you own them, or do you do consignment, or both? No. I hate consignment, honestly. The reason for that is we're in a temperamental, a lot of the cars we have are temperamental. And they're cars that could have sat for 10, 20 years. They need to be serviced. They need to be gone through. I'm very, very fussy and picky with what we buy. So everything needs to be, original specification. It needs to have the original Alpine radio. It needs to have the original correct tires. So those little details to me make a difference. And that's where that sort of like the concept of provenance and art comes into our business. I'm not just like selling a car and like, hey, wish you the best, good luck. There is an implied warranty when we sell something that what we're selling, is to the best standards. It could go win an award. You could go drive it. So yes, we are a dealership. Our goal always is to sell about 100 cars a year. And at any given point, we have 30 to $35 million in inventory. And, I don't.
I'm just curious, how do you finance that inventory?
We have institutional funding now. When we first started, it was impossible.
Yeah, because I was going to say, if you give a call to the traditional floor plan lenders, I don't know how quickly they're going to be running to finance this type of inventory.
No one. When we first started, people laughed us out of their offices, out of meetings. Really, after bootstrapping, starting very lean in the first few years, we really focused on just keeping our financials tight, showing the business model. Thank God Jordy ran the back end of the company. And after 3 years, we were able to show really tight financials. Now, at that point, it was friends and family. It was an outside investment money. Each deal, every car was its own deal. And we were very, very successful for clients. I would say, we underpromised and over-delivered to our investors at that moment. But we really realized that we were never going to make money and cover our overhead to grow if we had outside investment. We needed traditional funding. So, that's really where our two other business partners basically came into the picture. They helped us open doors. They helped us get into institutional money. We did the hard work. We made sure the financials were tight at a small scale. We made sure we were profitable. We made sure the investors were happy. And then they helped us open doors to bigger funding.
Before we talk about that, because I want to dig into that a little bit, just run me through, let's do a mini lightning round here. So how do you actually make money? Do you just make money on the vehicle? Do you sell value-added products, warranties and stuff? How do you make money?
We don't sell any value-added products. I think for us, really, the value-added products are what you are part of what you get when you come to CURATED.
Okay, so you're just making money on the vehicle itself.
We make money on the sales, and the reality is most of the time it's very, very transparent. We're going to chase a car. I find someone, the car's been, it's been sitting for 30 years. And I go into the client, I'm like, listen, this is probably the retail cost. Okay, this is what I can probably sell it for. But man, it needs, 90 days worth of work. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. I've got to get it to this level. And this is my margin. I've got to make money. I'm in business to make money. I have marketing. There's things I need to do. Whether it's a Ferrari and you need to go Classic K certification, or it's a Lamborghini and you need to get a whole historical certification. I need to do all these things to go achieve that retail number. So we really make our money by putting in the work onto each car. And presenting the cars, doing the research. And listen, to a certain extent, if someone bought a car years ago for a certain price, as long as they're making money, most of the time they're realistic and they're saying, I understand that you've got to make your margin. And same with the buyer, understanding okay, you have to make your margin. And really, I think that's where we excel. And that's why our cars sell themselves, is we're putting the time and energy, and that's apparent to the buyer and the seller.
What is your average sales price?
Our average sales price today, it's wild, is over $1 million.
Wow.
When we first started, it was around 300 to 400,000. And today our average sales price, I think, is $1,075,000.
Mm-hmm. And what's your gross margin, your average gross margin?
Man, it's all over the place. I mean, I will tell you, sometimes it's you have some cars where you're just very lucky, and, it's all over. It's hard to almost tell you a specific amount, because there's many deals that we do that we laugh when we say it's pro bono, but there are many deals that we do that are important for the brand in general. I can't tell you, when we first, I would say 5-6 years ago, we first started buying pre-merger AMG cars, which, if you don't know, are the early AMGs that were built in the 1980s. These cars were hand-built. They are very, very temperamental. But there's maybe 100, 200 in the world of these cars. And, they were nothing. I mean, the price of them was nothing. I mean, you could buy a car for $100,000. Today, an AMG Hammer could be $1 million car. So in those early days, we were making these insane margins on these cars, but the amount of work that went into these cars, and today the amount of work that we're putting into these cars, I would say when we first started, you could have a margin of 20, 30% on the car. Today, I would say it's almost a break even because the amount of work that these cars need, but it's so important to our brand and it's so important to those
I get
cars.
it. I mean,
yeah,
it's just like any retailer that, dealer that has that nice car on the front line that's going to bring the people in, but maybe not that profitable. Or, in the wholesale business where you might target an average of 1,000 per car. But if you're buying, a bundle of vehicles and half of them are going to, close to break even, but the other half will do 2,000. I mean, I get that idea. This episode is brought to you by Access Point Consulting. Cybersecurity isn't optional for dealerships in 2025. It's a necessity. The FTC safeguards rule requires dealerships to have a documented information security plan in place no matter what size dealership you're running. Requirements include risk assessments, vendor risk management, and qualified individual oversight of your information security program. A daunting task for dealers to take on alone. Access Point Consulting helps dealerships design, assess, and implement cybersecurity programs that not only meet compliance standards, but go above and beyond to keep your business secure. Peace of mind starts here at Access Point Consulting. Start your cybersecurity journey with Access Point Consulting by clicking the link in the show notes below. How long do the cars sit in inventory?
So our goal is 90 to 120 days. Today, I think our average is around 200 days. I would say this year was a little bit of a difficult year. We had a lot of trades that were coming on different cars. Listen, people were concerned. It was an election year. You have a lot going on in the world. So I don't remember doing this much work in general to try to make deals happen. I also see a lot of collectors that have bought these new cars, new Ferraris and hybrids that they're not that interested in. They're being forced to for their CRM and to get the new Ferrari or get the new Porsche. So they're coming to us to try to find a home for them. So our margins have drastically dropped. Our turnovers drastically dropped because we're taking trades that we normally wouldn't had to. So it has become a little bit more difficult. Where in the past, I don't think manufacturers were forcing people to take that many cars. And now we're the one, I feel like, cleaning up a lot of that mess. But, I see a younger generation going into, wanting something a little bit older.
Got it. So you said your average is $1 million. You do strive to do like 30 to 35 cars a year. So you're targeting like a 30 to 35 million.
No, we try to do about 100 cars a year.
Sorry, 100. So apologies. So you're doing trying to do like around 100 million a year in revenue. Now talk to me about like average recon on these vehicles. And I know recon is probably, that word probably makes you cringe because you do a lot more than just recon. You really make these things, but like, are we talking like 100K a car, below, more? What are we talking?
Our average today is probably like 34,000 a car, which if you think about it is a lot.
It's roughly 34 times the average dealer.
Yeah. So imagine it's a lot. And I always tell guys it can get worse very quickly. Because there is an implied warranty when you come to us. I've had numerous cases where I've ended up burning $100,000 into a car to do the right thing, but it always pays off. I think especially when you're dealing with this type of individual at a high net worth, I would say a long time ago, someone taught me, the one thing that rich people don't want is hassle, and if you can remove hassle from their life.
That's a great freaking quote.
Right. And if you can remove the hassle from their life, they don't care the cost, just handle it. So, when we first started, I drove Jordy crazy because, he's the numbers guy. And I'd be like, oh, this guy wasn't happy. We got to take care of it. We got to service it. We got to get him tires. We got to do this. And he's like, excuse my language, are you effing crazy? And I'm like, no. He's going to be a client for life. And at first he's like, dude, we're losing money on all these cars. I'm like, don't worry. And today, imagine 80% of our business is retention. So it's taken us a long time.
Oh, yeah. You built a book of business. Yeah.
Yes.
Loyal clients.
And things happen. Shit happens. At the end of the day, like things are going to happen. Not every client's going to be happy. You got to make the client happy at the end of the day. I think that's, I was just saying, I think that's like
that's just evergreen piece of advice for anyone in this industry, right? I think whenever you think with like dollars in your mind, you just end up making the wrong mistake. I mean, dude, if you're, like the customers that are out of their warranty period or whatever be, just take care of them, dude. Those referrals, those reviews, it just makes sense. And so throw like a couple % reserve account in your financials for the entire year, which is, what I think most smart dealers do. And, it gets factored into the reserve account, which is literally built for these types of situations, but it pays back dividends.
100%. And listen, not every situation is going to go perfect, even if you're right. I mean, I've had a few circumstances in my career, 4 or 5 times, where the customer was grossly wrong. It doesn't matter. Try to fix it. Try to make it work. Try to mitigate a solution and make everybody happy as much as you can.
So, all right. So we said average cars around 120 days, right?
120 days. Yeah. Right now it's a little bit more. It's close to 200 days, but our goal is always around 120 days.
All right. Now I wanted to go into let's talk a little bit about where do you source these vehicles?
So we are digging. I mean, listen, when we first started, no one was calling us. Today, 50% of our leads are people contacting us. Yes. So we're very fortunate for that. Social media, our YouTube, all these different things have accounted for that. It's been
okay. So like you're doing content marketing on social media, YouTube, showcasing, which by the way, yes. I can only imagine how successful that is because people love eating that stuff up on social media.
They love it. And you know what? You can never be afraid of, you've got to stay, to me, like at least for our business, it works. We found a niche. We focus on the niche. Don't try to, people have told me so many times, why won't you sell that car? Why won't you do that? I'm like, yeah, I'm leaving money on the table, but it doesn't fit the brand. It doesn't fit our niche. So, every day we try to remind ourselves, are we staying in the DNA of the company? And is our content staying in the DNA of the company? So we're very much in our niche. We're down a rabbit hole. So we have active users and people that are following our content. So 50% of our leads are from that way. The other 50% we're digging, and we have an incredible team. I spend my, late nights digging for cars. I can't tell you all my secrets, but I've done everything imaginable under the sun to try to find
Give us one secret. Give us one secret. Just one.
You know what? Listen, you can never be afraid of cold calling. And listen, I can't tell you how much success I've had where I've said, oh, okay, this guy, I heard a rumor that this car's here. Let me call the local car club there. Call the local car club. Oh, we know that guy. He owns this company. Call the company. Hey, do you mind putting me in touch with the owner? I believe he's involved in a car club. And just listen, people are so afraid sometimes of just waiting for something to come to them. You can't. Like, God gives us all these opportunities in our life. And like at the end of the day, yes, there's going to be opportunities that just come to you, but you got to make your own luck and you got to make your own opportunities. And you cannot be afraid, of calling, asking around. And listen, doing it in a way, people will help you. They will.
I know. Especially when you're calling about a product like this. It's like, I'm not calling to sell you insurance. Which I think, this is like something that they're passionate.
Yes.
I was just in Scottsdale. I was just in Scottsdale. I did this talk and it was at a place called Auto Car Club. Have you heard of that?
Yes. It's a beautiful place. It's so cool.
I felt bad. So listen, I don't even know how to appreciate all this because there's some crazy cars there. But it was something special. And it just got me thinking, right? Like seeing them all just like meticulously well maintained and kept there. I can only imagine if you reach out to them, you're in the business, like I will at least take a conversation.
Oh, of course. And listen, I think the reality is if it's sincere and like, hey, I'm really looking, I'd love to make the guy an offer on this car. No one's going to say, hey, like, don't bother me. And if they do, okay, don't bother them. It's really simple. So I think it's definitely, you got to be tenacious. When it comes to leads, you've got to be able to pound the pavement. You never know where you're going to meet someone in the industry. And that's car events. It's man, my business partner, Jordy, became a member of YPO and all of these chapters and organizations and business things. And I used to make fun of him for it. I'm like, dude, how many of these meetings are you going to? And listen, at the end of the day, he was meeting some of our best clients through that. And listen, at the end of the day, people are looking for people to help them. It's simple.
100%. You said it right. Rich people don't want hassle. I think that is such a good line that I just love that because it's so true. If you can deliver that next level experience to this type of client.
I just helped somebody buy a Range Rover. I didn't want to make anything. It's not something I do. I didn't even want to help. I did it because it's a mutual family friend. And I'm like, man, just go to the local Rover store. And they're like, no. It was such a hassle. It was a headache. They didn't make it easy. They were like, and I'm like, man, hold on, let me make a phone call. I'll have it delivered to your house. Like, done. Like, let's just do it. And listen, I did it. Literally, we made nothing. I said, just donate to this charity. But listen, at the end of the day, the guy was so thankful. Maybe one day he'll build a Ferrari collection. He has the money to, but who cares? I mean, listen, at the end of the day, you just got to sort of plant the seeds and do the right thing, treat people well. And listen, I think that, again, people are looking for their guy. People want their car guy. A great example. This is a very funny example. I never knew that there was like a high-end meat like butcher, I didn't know that was a thing. And in COVID, this guy opened up in Coral Gables. His name's Josh from Josh Premium Meats. And he started advertising these really incredible steaks and this and that. And I was like, oh, I'm going to try it. He made it so easy for me. He delivers the meat to the house. He delivers organic chicken, organic Wagyu steaks and all this stuff. I became like almost addicted. And I was like, Josh, get me this. What do you think about this? He's my guy. I don't go to anyone else now. And like, he's treated me well. He's given me discounts. He's put me in the right direction. So like, he's my guy forever. That's it. And I feel the same about most of our vendors as well. Like, they're our guy. Like, if they've treated me well, just do it.
Yeah. It's a huge testament to being able to differentiate in our industry by just providing, and not just in our industry, but specifically to our industry, by just providing truly next level service and viewing it as a relationship. You're giving me vibes. I just had Jeff Swickard on, owner of Swickard Auto Group, or a 40 plus store group on the West Coast. And his whole thing was all about hospitality. He says how they just treat it all like hospitality. And I think that's just a beautiful, simple way to put it. Right.
You just said it. It's like running a hotel business. And that's a great quote from him. And I think, listen, all dealers should look at that model. I mean, there's a dealer that made me feel like family 10 years ago. And I went into his store. It's Louis Vera from Vera Cadillac, local dealer here. My credit was horrible at the time. It was when I was first starting the business. I wanted a Cadillac Escalade. And he's like, oh my God, your credit's horrible. And he didn't throw me out of the store. He said, let me help you fix your credit. And he actually like sat with me, showed me things, and helped me fix my credit. I will never buy another family vehicle again from anyone else but him. And it's those small little things that build a business. And you've got to be cognizant of that. When you make people feel like they're part of a family, it's priceless.
Yeah, I think that is the best way to differentiate. Like you said, just offer that really unique perspective or type of hospitality to the customer that they just never want to shop anywhere else. So let me ask you a bit of a different question. Well, can you share any names of any cool clients? I mean, if there's anyone that's public that you can share, I'm sure there's many that you can't share, but I'm curious if there are some that you can.
I mean, we've had some of the most incredible clients. I'd say not so many celebrities. It's really like just legendary icons, entrepreneurs, people, moguls in the business world that have come to us, build collections. We've been honored to, be like one of the largest collectors in the US. I won't say his name. I've helped him build his Lamborghini collection. Some key individuals in Middle East. We've been able to do deals with them, and I would say we're not so discreet about the cars we sell. I like to share their stories and histories. I'm very discreet about our clients.
About the clients, I'm 100%.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you? Yeah. So I would have to imagine you've sold a bunch to like Dubai and stuff like that.
Not so much. We bought more. I think the Middle East car culture today currently is very focused on modern cars, whereas they historically they've owned some of the greatest cars of the 80s and 90s. But I think today I'm able to buy cars out of there. And they're very much focused on the new hypercar, the latest, greatest. Whereas I think the US market is growing and feeding on 80s, 90s, and early 2000s cars.
This episode is brought to you by my very own car dealership guy News. CDG News is here to help you stay updated on all things automotive. We're not your typical news crew. We're bringing you concise, unbiased car industry news in easy to digest formats. From the hottest headlines to podcast summaries, dealership best practices, and industry insights, we've got it all covered. And guess what? It's all free, no paywalls, just like we always promise. Hop over to cdg.news, that's cdg.news, and check us out. We're all ears for your feedback. Tell us what you need. Give us your honest thoughts. We're here to deliver real value. So don't wait. Head to cdg.news now or click the link in the show notes below.
If you had to restart your business today, but you could not do it in the market you're in physically, is there like a preferred market? Like, I'm just making this up. Like Texas is booming right now with the supercar market. Or is it like an online game? It doesn't matter. You can be in Fiji. But like at the end of the day, if you have an online presence, what's your take?
There's the biggest misconception. I can't tell you how many other dealers have come to our store and said, "Oh, wow, you guys are in Miami. You must be killing it." No, I think we sold like 2 cars to Miami. For us, Miami is a new car market. It is not a vintage car market. The reality is it doesn't matter where you are. I think in today's world, it's an online game. Yes, it helps to be in where there's an international airport. If someone wants to fly in and see the dealership, they can at any given point. It's not that hard to get to Miami. So Miami is a very central place. I love being in between both time zones. So example, whenever I'm in California, it's very hard to do business with Europe. And I do a lot of business with Europe. So it's very difficult. So I like being on this East Coast time zone because I can do business with Europe. I can do business with California. And it's right in between. I would say the downside of Miami is test driving our cars. The roads are horrible. The traffic's horrible. It's very hot in summer. Vintage cars don't like the heat. So, I would love to be in a place where the roads are incredible. And you've got like place to drive the cars. But the reality, I would say if I had to do it over again, it doesn't matter where I am. It would need to matter on the roads, how the roads are for our model at least. And then definitely, I think an international airport, I forget, I forget what dealer it was. I'm not going to call anyone out. I'll tell you who it was. Actually, it's okay. I went to go inspect a car at Mecum Auctions headquarters. And man, it was like in the middle of nowhere. I had to fly into this little city. It was 2 flights, then take an hour drive. So that was not the most conducive for visiting. So it needs to be something that, people from around the country or around the world could easily fly into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. So before we move on from the celebrity part, are any names that you have shared public that you can share? I'm just out of curiosity.
I got to think about that. I mean, we've definitely sold to some major YouTube guys that have publicly talked about their cars. We sold James, the Stradman. We sold him a Lamborghini Countach, and then he informed me that he wanted to drive it across country, which Lamborghini Countaches historically have a very bad reputation for basically their service costs and being able, maintenance. And he was able to, we went through the car for over 6 months and I think it was 4,000 miles back to Utah in 9 days. He made it across country without any incidents. But yeah, I think the others were a little bit more discreet.
John, what's your ideal customer profile? Like, do you have lots of crypto bros buying from this? Or is it more like, older gentlemen?
No, so when we first started, it was a much older demographic. I'd say 65 was the average age of someone putting together a collection. Since COVID, the market has completely changed. I think in general, people look at these cars as an acceptable alternative asset. Online auctions has shown people that these cars are liquid. They trade. There's a big market for them. And I think today, the average age, our average client is around 40 years old and they have about 10 to 20 cars. So listen, the age is very young. It's very, very young. And the future is very, very bright We have numerous clients in their late 20s, early 30s, some Bitcoin, not a lot of Bitcoin, but anything from the finance world, the tech world. So it's really, really impressive to see a much younger generation. I would say chasing cars from 2000 to 2010. I call it the video game generation. But it's become much younger over the last few years.
I have to imagine, so I uploaded one time a post and I had a venture capitalist reach out to me and they sent me a picture of their friend's car collection. So this guy was a VC. You definitely know who this is. I'll tell you, like, Asian guy, former VC, had just massive, massive outcomes, retired from the VC game and just got this incredible collection of you're kind of nodding. I don't know if you know who I'm talking about, but they have 100 plus.
But I'm already thinking, I'm like, could it be this person?
I'll have to show you a picture actually when we wrap this up because I want to respect her confidentiality. But this was crazy. I mean, the guy sent me all these pictures and stuff, so I'll show you that shortly. Before we wrap up, and I want to ask you about your VC funding and how that came to be, but one other quick tactical question: price discovery. Is there such a thing in this industry? Or, let's go, are you just putting a fixed markup on what you paid, right? How do I know how much this, 1981 vehicle is actually worth if there aren't any good comps in the market?
So a lot of what we buy, there aren't any good comps. That's the reality. Most of what,
which I have to imagine is a good thing for you.
Yes and no. And here's why. So most of what comes to market is the stuff that is sort of edgy. You'll see a car that might not be restored or a car that has some history that's not that great. I'm chasing the really, really best of this stuff. So I can always show a client why I paid the premium for this specific car and then the upside that I believe it should be. I use other formulas. It's very easy with cars like Carrera GT, Ferrari F40. They made 1,300. So, there are plenty of comps. A car like a Diablo GT in a one-off color, there's one. A car like an SE30 Yoda, there's 26 in the world. How do you put a number on that? So it is a little difficult, but I think the market, there is a good understanding of what has sold last and then an understanding of, okay, how does this compare to other market segments? So I try to always put together a formula. I will say this, I buy on my gut. I buy something because I love it. I am the buyer. I am the sole buyer of the company. So I'm very, very picky with what I buy and I buy only things that I love. And I will pay up for great examples. But it's because I believe in it and I believe that exponentially I can get more. But I do always have a target goal in mind in terms of our gross margin whenever I look at anything and I say, okay, this is my goal and, I'll go from there.
Got it. Dude, your website's beautiful. Who did that or who does your website?
Thank you. We have an incredible team, a credible marketing team. For years, the marketing team was me and a photographer. But in the last 2 years, we've really been fortunate. We've got this incredible team now that does some great content, photos, video. And it's been really an honor to watch that grow.
So is that all in-house?
All in-house, yes. I think it's important to keep it in-house. I think it really is.
I think for a business like yours, I agree. You want to be differentiated. How do you do your pictures, by the way? Is it in-house studio, I'm assuming?
Yeah, we built a studio in the back. And the reason for that was we used to go out to locations and scout these incredible locations and shoot the cars all there. But you also can't control the weather conditions. You can't control a lot of things. So we said, okay, guys, we got to build a studio that's treating the cars like art and that can focus on the details. So that was I will say that was a game changer for us that really anyone should be thinking about. Yes, it's a massive investment, but the reality is, to me, it allowed us to photograph the cars much quicker. We didn't have to deal with weather conditions, traffic, all these other outside factors.
Smart. All right. So before we wrap up, tell me a little bit about the VC path. How did you get intro to Jim Goetz from Sequoia? I know you also have another investor. How did that come to be?
So it's sort of crazy. It started with a gentleman by the name of Alan Laz of Laz Parking. He walked into our original showroom.
I used to think it was lazy parking, but I guess it's Laz parking.
Laz parking. For his last name, he's the largest privately held parking company in the U.S. They have like 16,000 employees. He's a complete visionary because he really is. He's created a business that is about paying it forward and treating his employees right. And when he met us, he's not a car guy. He fell in love with the dynamic of me and Jordy, my business partner, and how we were these entrepreneurs that wouldn't give up. And he helped us and mentored us to get our first credit line, grow the business, grow it a little more. I think we went from $3 million to $6 million in inventory. And company started to make money. So that was a really beautiful path. 4 years into the business, a gentleman by the name of Jim walks in, obviously a former CEO of Sequoia Capital, incredible success in the tech world. I mean, for many years, he was considered like, the Midas touch in the tech world. And he fell in love with our story. He loved that I was there was the right and left brain of the business. He loved that the respect, I wear a t-shirt and jeans. Jordy's a blue blazer and khaki pants. And he loved that dynamic and the fact that we respected each other so much. He also loved the fact that we both had pregnant wives. And he said, listen, anytime one of my entrepreneurs is about to have a child, I believe something happens. And then, mentally, emotionally, you start to work that much harder. So he was he actually bought into the business, which was completely incredible. We had a small little exit at the time for us. But what he did is he really pushed us to grow and think outside the box, push us to go get 15 million, 20 million, 25 million. And he really is, it's the coolest dynamic because Alan, here he is, this very traditional, parking garages. It's it's brick and mortar.
It's a huge dichotomy. Business. Alan is like traditional. Yes. Jim is like pie in the sky, like think big,
So I would say it's the greatest blessing to have them as mentors. And I would tell you that it's never about any money that they put into the business. The business has been it's run very lean. We've never really put cash back into the business. We've grown it very organically, but their input into our early days was a game changer. That advice, that knowledge from them, the love from them, the support from them, watching them in a room is like nothing you've ever seen because there's just so much respect and these different ideas of how to attack a problem, how to grow a business. So it's been the greatest blessing of my life. I always look around at my life now with my kids. I look at, my house, my personal car, and I thank them for their guidance. I wouldn't be here today without their mentorship and without their support. And I would say it's allowed us to dream big and think big. And I think for any entrepreneurs, I always say like, I always tell guys like, hey, don't, there's a reason it's called We Are Curated. You're not going to create something big without a team. You can't just do it by yourself. I'm a massive believer of that. And it's been the most incredible journey.
Hell of a story, John. Appreciate you coming on and tell us about it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. You got to visit us next time you're in Miami.
I will.
And would love to teach you a little bit about some of the cars.
All right. Hope you enjoyed that episode. Please give the podcast a rating, consider subscribing to the show, and check the show notes for links to what we talked about. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys next time.